So when you think of a landfill, what's the first image that comes to your mind?
Oh, it's probably, huge piles of trash, maybe some bulldozers.
Exactly. The smell, maybe, and definitely not a lot of wildlife.
Right.
Or if you do think of birds, you're probably picturing what? Gulls?
The
Vultures?
usual suspects, yeah. The so-called trash birds.
But that picture, that whole idea might be, it might be wrong. Or at least incomplete.
It's way more complex than that. And we've got this fascinating research article that really digs into it. It uses this massive amount of community science data from eBird to really quantify what's living at U.S. landfills.
So they're going beyond just, hey, I saw a gull there.
Far beyond. They're trying to see if these places are just ecological black holes
Sure.
or something else.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to get into whether these huge human-made landscapes are actually maybe helping biodiversity, or if they're just attracting the same handful of tough generalist species everywhere.
And crucially, what those different habitats within the landfill mean for conservation. Because that's the real AHA moment preview right there.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, spoiler alert, the scavengers are definitely there. That part is true. But the data shows that a surprising number of species we're actually worried about, species of conservation concern, are also using these sites.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why even look at landfills in the first place? What was the scientific driver here?
It all comes down to land use change.
Yeah.
It's, the single biggest reason bird populations are declining across the globe.
Right. When we develop an area, we tend to simplify it. We plow over a complex field and plant one crop, or we clear a forest for a subdivision.
Exactly. And that tends to favor generalists over specialists. It's a process called biotic homogenization. The fear is that every developed area starts to look the same ecologically.
And a landfill is, it's about as developed and simplified as a landscape can get.
You'd think so. And since it's our most common way of dealing with waste, they are everywhere. They're a massive human footprint on the planet. So the researchers wanted to test that homogenization idea on a huge scale.
So to do that, you need a ton of data, and that's where eBird comes in. How did they actually use it?
They tapped into years and years of volunteer data. They focused on 19 landfills across the continental U.S. that get visited a lot by birders.
Okay.
But here's the clever part. For each of those 19 landfills, they found a reference site in the very same county.
A control group, basically.
Precisely. A nearby park or a nature preserve that had a similar amount of bird watching effort. It lets you ask a really clean question. Does the bird community at the dump look different from the community just down the road?
And to understand the answer, you have to realize a landfill isn't just one thing. It's not just a pile of garbage.
Not at all. It's a mosaic of different habitats, all managed in different ways.
Okay, break that down for us. What are the parts?
So first you have the part everyone pictures. The active refuse site. The working face. That's where the trucks are dumping, where the fresh garbage is.
And that's the food source.
That's the huge, predictable food source. It's what brings in the gulls, the bald eagles, the turkey vultures, the big high trophic level feeders.
Okay, the classic trash birds. But what happens when a section is full?
It gets capped. And this is where it gets really interesting. Those become the capped or covered areas. And by law, they have to be maintained with short vegetation.
Grasslands.
Essentially, yes, they're
Yeah.
managed as grasslands. And the reason is to protect the liner underneath. You can't have deep-rooted trees or shrubs growing because they could puncture the systems that keep all the nasty stuff contained.
Wow. So a regulation designed to protect groundwater accidentally creates a permanent grassland habitat.
For decades, maybe even centuries.
Mhm.
It's an incredible unintentional consequence.
Yeah.
And then there's a third piece, water management. Most landfills have constructed wetlands. They're engineered ponds and marshes designed to capture and filter all the runoff from the site.
So you have a buffet next to a prairie next to a pond.
That's a great way to put it. It means these sites offer way more than just old French fries. They offer specialized places for nesting, for resting during migration, for foraging. It completely changes the equation.
It really does. So let's get to the findings. First big question, species richness. Did the landfills have fewer species overall, as you might predict?
Well, the numbers were fascinating. The landfills had a median of 144 species, the reference sites, a median of 160.
Wait, that's it? The difference is only 16 species.
It's a small difference, yeah. It's statistically significant, but it's small. It's only about a 10% drop.
That feels tiny. For a place we think of as an ecological wasteland, to have almost the same number of bird species as a local park or forest, that kind of defies the whole idea of simplification, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Hmm.
It suggests that while you might lose some birds, maybe some sensitive forest birds that need deep woods, you're simultaneously gaining a whole other set of species that are drawn to those new open habitats.
So the diversity isn't destroyed, it's just shifted.
Exactly. It's a total remix of the local bird community, not a decimation of it.
So what about that homogenization idea? Did they find that a landfill in Boston has pretty much the same bird community as one in Seattle? You know, the same universal trash eaters everywhere?
That's what they tested next, using a tool called Jacquard's Index.
Which is just a fancy way of saying how similar two places are.
Yeah, it's a score of how many species two sites share. And if homogenization were happening, distant landfills should be more similar to each other than distant parks are. But that's not what they found.
No.
No, they found that the similarity between two landfills far apart was about the same as the similarity between two reference sites far apart.
Meaning the local environment still matters a lot. The landfill in Seattle is still a Seattle birding spot, not just a carbon copy of the one in Boston.
Exactly right. The local geography, the regional bird populations, the migration routes, all of that still shapes the community. The homogenization theory just didn't hold up.
Okay, so this is where it gets really good. Who is actually showing up more often at these landfills? Let's start with the obvious ones, the ones feeding on the trash.
Yeah, no surprise there. The data confirmed the stereotype that vertfish scav diet class, so carnivores, fish eaters, scavengers, they were way overrepresented.
How much?
They made up about 25% of the species found at landfills, compared to only about 15% in the wider county. That's a huge jump, and it's clearly driven by that active refuse pile.
And the indicator species analysis, I assume, picked out the usual suspects?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking 6 different species of gulls. Herring gull, ring-billed gull, Iceland gull, plus the invasive European starling, the poster children for trash birds.
Okay, so that part of the story checks out, but that's not the whole story.
Not even close. This is the real turning point of the study, because that same analysis also found a whole other group of birds that were seen more often at landfills than at the reference sites. And these birds have zero interest in scavenging garbage.
These are the habitat specialists.
A habitat specialist. And the ones that jump off the page are the grassland birds, some of the most rapidly declining birds in North America.
Who are we talking about specifically?
They specifically identified the eastern meadowlark and the Savannah sparrow.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 species that are in serious trouble because of habitat loss from agriculture. And here they are, showing up more reliably on top of our capped garbage dumps than in surrounding natural areas. The study also found American pipits, another bird of open country.
That is just, it's so counterintuitive. We're losing prime habitat on farms and ranches, but we're accidentally creating these long-term grassland preserves on top of landfills.
That's the irony, and it's the core takeaway for conservation. It isolates the mechanism. They aren't there for the trash, they are there for the habitat structure, the short grass, the lack of trees.
And it wasn't just grassland birds, right? The wetlands were pulling in their own specialists.
Yep, same story there. The analysis flagged several migratory waterfowl, Ross's goose, northern shoveler, ruddy duck.
All using those constructed wetlands.
Clearly using them as stopover points during migration, places to rest and feed, so the mechanism is just so clear. The specialists are using the infrastructure that's required to safely manage the landfill. It's a profound, if accidental, win-win.
And this isn't just a handful of sites. You said over 2,600 landfills in the U.S.
That's right. And they average almost 100 acres each. It's a massive land area. So this isn't some quirky little finding. It points to a huge, untapped conservation resource that's hiding in plain sight.
So if we know this is happening, what can we do to make it even better? How can land managers intentionally improve these habitats?
Well, the opportunities are enormous, especially after a landfill is closed and capped. I mean, you can't build on it, right? So turning it into a park or a wildlife habitat is one of the best possible uses.
And the study suggests some pretty specific actions for those grassland birds, for the meadowlarks.
It comes down to really simple management shifts. Instead of just planting any old cover crop, you could plant native grasses that provide better food and shelter.
Okay.
And most critically, you adjust the mowing schedule. You make sure you're not mowing during the spring and early summer when the birds are trying to nest.
Right, so you don't destroy all the nests.
Exactly. And you could do rotational mowing, so some parts are always left taller. Tiny operational changes that could have huge benefits.
And for the wetlands, the waterfowl.
Same idea.
Yeah.
The sources do mention you have to be careful about contaminants. Bioaccumulation is a real concern that needs monitoring.
Sure.
But the study confirms that if they are designed and managed well, These wetlands can be incredibly valuable for migratory birds. Landfills could become these key ecological stepping stones.
It's a powerful idea, but we should also be critical here. What were the limitations of a study this big?
Yeah, the researchers were very upfront about that. The biggest one was a spatial bias in the data, meaning most of their sites, 15 of the 19 landfills, were east of the Mississippi River, mostly in the Northeast.
Ah, so it's really more of an East Coast study. Can you really apply these findings to a landfill in, say, the Arizona desert?
That's the question. The general principle probably holds, but the specific species would be totally different. You wouldn't find eastern meadowlarks. You might find other grassland specialists from that region. It really shows where we need to do more research next out west.
And what about the reference sites? They weren't perfect matches, right?
No, they were chosen based on birding effort, not because they were a perfect habitat match. So it's possible some of the effect is because a landfill is the only big grassland in a heavily forested county. But even with those caveats, the pattern is so strong for these specialists that the conclusion holds up.
This whole deep dive just completely reframes how you have to think about these places. It shows that even our most modified, most unnatural landscapes are more complex than we think.
It really does. It takes that simple idea of the trash bird and shows that right next to them, you can have a habitat that's critical for some of our most vulnerable species.
It's an amazing conservation opportunity.
It is, and it leaves me with this one big question for you to chew on. Think about this. If the active trash piles attract the scavengers and the capped areas attract the specialists, what happens to the bird community when a landfill closes for good?
The food subsidy vanishes.
The food subsidy vanishes. The thousands of gulls will go elsewhere. So then what kind of research do we need to do right now to figure out how to manage that transition? How do we optimize that land just for the meadowlarks and the sparrows once the overwhelming noise of the trash birds is gone? That's the next frontier here.